The fact that Chelsea could have signed Caicedo for £5 million during the 2020-21 season, only to sign him for £115 million 2 years later, is perhaps the perfect example of how the transfer market works for the most part. There's the haves and the have-nots financially. The smaller clubs have to get creative with their finances, which translates to being smart with their scouting. While sometimes it feels like the bigger clubs have abandoned that altogether, can't be bothered by it, scouting their future signings from a list of already established players. Moisés Caicedo was yet another talent that Brighton have been able to sign for a few million and later sell for much more. In Caicedo's case, they have received 23 times the amount they paid for the Ecuadorian star just 2 years after signing him, an incredible appreciation of their asset. The other side of such being that Chelsea have paid 23 times what they could have for the same player. But spending isn't something they think twice about, as these windows have shown. But with Caicedo in particular, while this window has been a weird one, it isn't the first time he has had a strange window, a window of confusion at times, which could have been what put clubs such as Chelsea off of his signature in the first place. From his move to England to his near move to Arsenal, and now the summer's battle between Liverpool and Chelsea, Caicedo's transfer windows have never been straightforward. Hello, I'm Adrian, and before we begin, I just wanted to welcome you to Rabona TV, and a special welcome back to everyone who's already subscribed. How you doing, man? You good? Great to see you around here again. If you are finding me for the first time, then here's my request. Don't hit subscribe just yet. Try before you buy. You know, if you learn something new and you enjoy this video and you like the vibe, then feel free to subscribe and join our community for a minimum of 2 videos per week and some short form videos for topics that don't necessitate a fully, just a shorty. But anyways, guys, let's get into it. Sources are listed below, and this time we're going to move from the present to the past. You like that title? My video on Neymar this week had a Song of Ice and Fire reference in it. Now we're winking toward Narnia. I mean, I never actually got into those books, so I'm ultimately a fraud in this one, but anyway. The Moisés Caicedo transfer from Brighton to Chelsea with a quick layover in Liverpool was a fun one to watch from the outside looking in. You had so much hope of a signing from Chelsea supporters. The path to Caicedo seemed relatively clear. Then Liverpool step in with an accepted proposal, only for, well, let's not get ahead of ourselves just yet. Part of the reason as to why Chelsea will have been confident that their pursuit of Caicedo would be successful this summer was that Arsenal had finally signed Declan Rice from West Ham, thus filling a spot in their midfield that they had previously identified Caicedo as the top man for. In January of this year, with Chelsea having a £55 million bid turned down by Brighton, Chelsea ended up securing Enzo Fernandez later in that window. However, Arsenal picked up the pursuit, offering Brighton £60 million for the Ecuadorian, which was turned down. Caicedo still had ambitions of leaving Brighton for one of the London clubs, however, and after changing agents, he took to social media to plead with Brighton to allow him to leave. Brighton, however, were determined to keep him, and their pursuit of European places in the table was going exceptionally well, and beyond any silly OTT offers, Caicedo would be staying with Brighton until the summer to help them make it to Europe, in spite of an improved £70 million bid from Arsenal that was rejected. In March of 2023, Caicedo signed a new deal with Brighton without any release clause, but I do wonder if there was some sort of agreement inserted. Not an official release clause, but something similar in a sense to what we saw with Dembele at Barcelona, a transfer obligation clause where if a bid over, I don't know, 110 was submitted, for example, then Brighton was obligated to accept it. That speculation though, sorry, I should have had the speculation alarms running during this contract talk segment of this video because I don't know that for sure. I'm just taking an educated guess. Okay, alarms cut. Back to facts. With Declan Rice moving to Arsenal, that cleared the runway for other teams to take a run at Caicedo, and Chelsea did so. Having lost Jorginho, Kovacic, and Kante over the last couple of windows, they had ambitions of continuing to revolutionize their midfield, with Enzo Fernandez being the first piece of their midfield puzzle. Chelsea had previous offers rejected, such as their bid of £70 million. Liverpool had a midfield revamp of their own on the go and needed somebody to replace Fabinho. And for ages, it seemed as though Liverpool would sign Belgian wonderkid Roméo Lavia from Southampton as the transfer price crept higher and higher for that particular target. But with Chelsea struggling to get a deal over the line for Caicedo as they didn't meet Brighton's firm asking price, Liverpool swooped in to try to steal the Ecuadorian away from under Chelsea's clients' noses. How did they do it? A masterclass in negotiations, as one pundit said, but as my man Stephen McInerney pointed out on Twitter, well, congratulations on saying the biggest number. Perfect. I've got it all here on Rabona TV. A Song of Ice and Fire, Narnia, and Succession references. Now, hang on, because it's going to get a bit breakneck here. At this point, Liverpool and Chelsea essentially swapped their targets around. Liverpool, frustrated with the Lavia saga and unwilling to meet Southampton's £50 million valuation, figured they'd go all in on Caicedo, while Chelsea threw in a bid for Lavia and showed their intent to sign him. What happens next? Liverpool have their monstrous bid for Caicedo accepted, with Klopp himself even confirming as such. He did say not to count your chickens before they hatch, or whatever this German saying is.
What is that? The fear of the bear? Before? Whatever.
So he wasn't exactly 100% confident that Liverpool would land Caicedo. That same day, rumblings began to reach the media that while Liverpool's bid was accepted by Brighton, Caicedo had no interest in joining Liverpool. He wanted to join Chelsea as he wanted to be one, part of that club, and two, be based in London. He had previously spoken of how much he has respect for Chelsea and how much he loves the city of London. Having heard that, Chelsea had to meet Brighton's asking price of 115 million in order to get their bid accepted as well, as the personal terms between themselves and Caicedo were a formality at that point. According to the likes of Fabrizio Romano, the agreement on personal terms was already in place between Chelsea and Caicedo. All they were missing was the accepted bid from Brighton. 115 million pounds was both enough to persuade Brighton to accept Chelsea's bid for Caicedo, as well as make Moisés Caicedo the most expensive player in Premier League history. Remember, they spent about 106 million pounds on Enzo Fernandez. That's an expensive midfield. Oh, and by the way, while everyone was assuming that Liverpool would now just go all in for Lavia, the thinking being if they could sanction 111 million for Caicedo, why not meet Southampton's valuation now and get it done? Well, Chelsea's bid of £53 million for Lavia was accepted by Southampton, and word came out that Lavia was going to choose Chelsea as his next destination, irrespective of whether Liverpool improved their bid or not. And so, there are two switches here that I was alluding to in the title of this section of the video. The first, of course, is from Caicedo, but it's more of a twist than a switch, as he made it known that he only wanted Chelsea. He stayed firm on that. The second, Liverpool changing their target from Lavia to Caicedo, missing out on Lavia, only for Lavia to feel slighted by Liverpool pulling out and not meeting the valuation to sign him and electing to go with Chelsea. Let's be honest though, if you were a young player, this Chelsea project would certainly be attractive, especially if you're in Lavia's position and you would get to play with both Fernandez and Caicedo in that midfield. So, Liverpool's pursuit of Caicedo ultimately led to them coming away with nobody. They're going for 30-year-old Stuttgart midfielder Wataru Endo. By the way, I should say, there's no way to know whether Chelsea would have signed both Lavia and Caicedo to begin with, or whether it was a fun, may as well, bonus to get Lavia as well after their Caicedo bid was also accepted. But they've certainly taken away an opportunity to strengthen from one of their top 4 rivals or competitors. Oh, and the wardrobe part of this section of the video, I know that you're still thinking about that. The image of Caicedo wearing a Chelsea shirt from a few years ago, which was used in his unveiling video. Yeah, that was a stretch, but whatever. Shall we get back to Caicedo and one of his other crazy transfer stories then? Yeah. We're now going back to Ecuador. Not so long ago, really, as Caicedo was 21 now and was just 19 when he moved to Brighton in 2021. But his move there was a bit of a strange one, at least for those who ultimately passed on signing the talented youngster from Ecuador's Independiente del Valle. In fact, this will let you know as to why some of the bigger clubs in the world ended up passing on Caicedo when he was available for around £5 million, and why other young talents may have been passed upon by big clubs. Now, I linked to this article in the description, but in researching Caicedo a bit so that I'm in the know, I saw Melissa Reddy tweet something about Caicedo perhaps not having the best representation, and how that has been sort of ever present during his career. So in following that thread a little bit, I found this story from the New York Times that I thought was worth sharing as it's quite illuminating. Now, despite suffering a ruptured cruciate ligament when he was just 16 and missing out on 10 months of football, Caicedo climbed the ranks of Independiente quite quickly. The youngest of 10 children, who hails from Santo Domingo, Ecuador, quickly fell onto the radar of scouts representing the biggest clubs in Europe. Manchester United, AC Milan, and Chelsea were amongst the first who tried to sign him, but they were put off by the, here comes that word again, nebulous nature of, well, who to contact. According to New York Times writer Rory Smith, absolute legend, while Caicedo was in Ecuador and even as recently as early 2023, he was represented by an agency called Cancha. However, as he was beginning to gain interest from European mega clubs, he and his family suddenly were pestered by all sorts of agencies that were hoping to leech money off of a transfer, represent him. All of a sudden, there was not just Cancha, who claimed to represent Caicedo, but also a German agency called PSM Performance, as well as an Argentinian agency. 3. How does this happen? Well, with agencies around the world wanting a piece of the pie, the transfer pie, they began reaching out to Caicedo's family members, and allegedly, a couple of said family members had come to agreements with different agencies. So from what is typically a straightforward process, all of a sudden, interested parties didn't know who exactly it was that was representing Caicedo and were turned off by the lack of clarity and the seemingly never-ending web of agents they had to get through in order to secure a deal for the young Ecuadorian. Pretty much all of the big clubs turned away from Caicedo. They didn't want to get involved in all of that mess, but Brighton was one of the clubs that stuck through it, as they have great experience in signing young players from South America at this point. As these situations with multiple agents and agencies working with one player are far more commonplace there. And they've been rewarded for it quite handsomely, no? So, as you can see from 2 out of 2 moves, Moisés Caicedo's transfers have not been straightforward. And hey, if you want, you can include the attempt to escape Brighton for Arsenal with that come get me plea on Instagram in January as part of this whole Caicedo's crazy transfer sagas as well. But that's it for this one, guys. As always, if you enjoyed this video or you learned something new, then do be sure to subscribe for more from me here at Rabona TV. My name's Adrian. Thanks again for watching, and we'll catch you guys in the next video. Be well.